Hello, this is Cuckoo, and I'm here at Superbooth, and we got a room all to ourselves here with the Continuum Fingerboard.
So rare to have that, but it's great.
Yeah, but in fact, there are millions, not millions, but hundreds of people there. Thousands? I don't know.
Millions.
Yeah,
Right.
millions of people out there playing different synthesizers, and
Yeah.
they all wanted to be here, but we kicked them out for this.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, how has the reception been so far right here in the...
It's been phenomenal. Superbooth, I think it's a great success because it's been able to attract a certain people, and the way that the Funkhaus is constructed, there's all sorts of studios, nooks and crannies, and special places you can meet, and you can really concentrate on the things that you're interested in. It's different from a normal trade show in that respect, and that's a real big benefit because when you're dealing with audio, people want to hear things, and if everybody's hearing the same thing, you can't take away some of the more special things that an instrument can do.
Yeah, and you had like a performance like yesterday. Was it yesterday? The
Yeah.
day, yeah,
Oh,
the day
yeah,
before
it's
yesterday.
yesterday.
Yeah,
Yeah.
time. Yeah, and in this massive arena, no, a massive concert hall made for making
It was like
film scores.
film scoring, yeah. So there weren't that many seats, but it's got this amazing floor area and a huge pipe organ in the back,
And
massively high ceiling, and so we actually set up on one half of the area, and then projected into where the audience is, in a beautiful setup with video playback and GoPros and. Awesome setup. Really nice to be in a big environment like that.
I was a bit curious about how the Continuum would fill up the room. I mean, sound-wise, and sitting there listening to it, it felt really natural to hear the Continuum in such a huge hall.
Yeah.
I was very happy and pleased to hear that.
Oh, good. Yeah. Well, and some of the sounds are orchestral in nature, and so even when you hear like a solo flute or something in a large space, it does take on this cavernous, dreamy quality that the Continuum can fill out, and it can also do like thick orchestral soundscape type sounds that fit perfectly into that environment.
Yeah,
And it all comes under really small, intimate finger control.
Yeah.
It's directly right in that half-inch travel area that we have into the surface.
yeah. And by the way, this is Edmund Eagan. He is the sound designer of almost all the sounds on the Continuum, and you've also made
The Eagan Matrix.
the Eagan Matrix. That is But I guess you and Liffold has been in a very close collaboration when it comes to the Eagan Matrix. I mean, he's obviously programmed.
He does all the DSP.
Yeah. So you design the specifications and
then he says what is and isn't possible.
Yeah.
And
then you say do it anyway.
Well, yeah. If I ask him 3 or 4 times, eventually he gives up. A few things are like that, but it's an interesting design process because he's intimately learned a particular shark series.
Yeah.
And when you deal with anything in a single shark, you have tremendous possibilities, and then there's limitations. It just can't do certain things. So it's basically a corner of a universe, in DSP technology, but inside that corner is just a vast number of things that are actually never explored.
Yeah.
It's very interesting to talk to him about the way that chip has components that haven't even been used.
Yeah.
Or he'll go into documentation. It's like, yeah, they included this because they had those subroutines, but basically no one's ever explored it.
Yeah, whenever he's rants about what people are using the shark for, he's like, nobody uses it for what it's good for, and they only use like 3% of what it can do. But he's really, really explored much of the shark, every corner of it.
Yeah, and it's taken us into some really interesting areas of especially with these components that we're starting to use more and more for physical modeling. These biquad filters, and they're very interesting, in some ways unstable, but no more unstable than like a guitar string or a violin string, or the way the sound goes through a French horn is unstable.
Yeah.
A real beauty about dealing with those systems in the continuum is that the sound are not actuated by just playing them when you get a note on and a velocity level. They're actually continuous all the time. So your ear is responding and you react, and sometimes after you play the continuum for a while, it's subconscious. Like you don't even realize you're reacting until you try to imitate that sound again with just a normal MIDI keyboard, and you realize I can't get the things out of that sound that I know are possible.
Yeah. Well, and quite recently you released a quite substantial firmware upgrade with a lot of new features, like new reverbs and new modules that I don't even know the name of. And also now we're looking at yet an unreleased version of a future update that has even more interesting things.
Yes, yeah. So the one of the newest things we did was we did a series of these things called micro delays. So they're designed, they just have a very short memory thing, and they're designed to be into loop and feedback situations. And so using these things, you can do a thing called waveguide synthesis. And our good friend Christoph has been, who's an avid Continuum owner and programmer, and is also responsible for the iOS end of what the Continuum has to offer. He's been really diving into this, and today we actually have a sound that Cuckoo had modified, and we have it over here of this pluck sound.
Yeah, so Christoph, he made the basics, and then he made the foundation of it, and then I reduced the amplitude, because sometimes a lot of the sounds are so expressive. So in some normal situations, you'd like it to be a bit more compressed, perhaps, and in some huge arenas, it could be really cool to have all that spectrum to play with. So I made some little adjustment, and then you used some of the new functionality to tune it even further.
That's right, yeah. So an interesting side effect of waveguide is that it's really hard to tune these systems because they feed back so fast. And you don't really want to limit those aberrations in the sound, because that's where some special things happen. Physical synthesis is a lot about writing these waves, and you don't want to keep people back from the edge of the wave and falling off of it, because that's where some special magic sort of happens. So in this, we realized that with some physical modeling we were doing with other feedback systems, that you change the pitch, they go out of tune. So we've developed a tuning system. So it's almost like it's this line that we see right there, and you can adjust the parameter. This is a pretty rudimentary one, and oftentimes it doesn't take much. But by adjusting those parameters, you can take this system, not sacrifice the tonal characteristics of it, and make it in tune with the playing surface.
Yeah, that's great. Well, let's play it. Let's see what it sounds like.
So
this is not a sound that Ed has designed, so he's just played with it today.
Not played very much. We just started. But it's one of the things, Cuckoo, we didn't talk about was that each sound in the continuum, it's not like you approach it the same way playing technique. So it's like learning a new instrument. So in a lot of ways, we encourage people, if they get into playing the continuum, to find a few things they love and really practice them and discover the secrets. And one of the things that you discovered, one of the things that you discovered is like that it was hard to control those dynamics, and that's almost something that you would learn as you perfected, playing that. I go through that all the time too. Yeah. So okay, we'll play a few things. In this one, it's an interesting timbre because when you touch it, you get this pluck sound, and it's more sustained over here and muted on this end.
There's a delay there involved.
Right? We were hearing a little bit of a delay in there. But with this one, when you wiggle your finger, it has the same sort of energy put into it. If you move a string and you're re-energizing the string like on a guitar by hitting the frets a little bit, or by accentuating the string, and it starts to revibrate again. So when you hear it, when you do vibrato.
I think it's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
That's really, I think it's focus. Yeah, I think it's this has the special quality that I find in many of the patches. Even though this is based on some of the just released modules in there.
Yeah.
I find lots of them has this textured kind of acoustic feel to them. How do you? I mean, you obviously got a good ear for creating sounds. How do you go about?
What I usually do is I'll find something that inspires me in the acoustical world, and then start going down the road of replicating that, and then don't only use that as a starting point, and realize that the system is going to direct me into things that it can do, that the sound that I'm trying to emulate can't do. But it also can't do some of the things, and there's really no reason for me to finish it and say, well, this is the perfect saxophone emulation, because it would be ridiculous, and there's no point to that, because the world is full of saxophones and many, many good saxophone players. Yeah. So what you want to do is create a sound in the continuum that... Sorry.
We're in a so-called dry room.
Yeah.
So
you... might want to emulate the kind of textures and feeling that instrument has, but bring it into the continuum. So they just naturally start to sound acoustic. And also, I think electronically, there's a plethora of synthetic timbres that are just natural in that environment, and it's just a byproduct of the way that traditional synthesizers have been designed now, with key switches controlling them. And so this is a very different thing. This is a continuous control. Yeah. So we should try some different sounds?
Yeah, show us some different examples of sounds that you made.
So this one, this crystal sound.
Dolce Cristallo.
Dolce Cristallo. And it's beautiful. I was just impressed with. I'd seen a performance of someone playing some Mozart on singing bowls, like those wine glass things.
Yeah.
Very, and I just love that kind of that glassy feeling, and also the fact that you could not only play the glass that way, but as you rubbed it, you would get this edginess. Like a Tibetan bowl has that same kind of chatter that goes on. Yeah. So I wanted to replicate that, and so that was the starting point. And
I just want to cut in there and show you. I mean, what I filmed before on the Mac here is the editor, and this is the patch, the whole patch for this sound. It's down at this area. Yeah. It looks like nothing. I mean, it's a totally empty grid and just a few letters there. And what I know that each of these letters, they kind of represent a little formula based on how hard you press and how much you slide, and where's your position is. But what you're showing me here is that by carefully choosing just the right module and feeding in the right numbers in the right modules, you can create this magical sound that we will hear soon. I think it's amazing what you're doing.
It's probably one of the strongest parts of the Eagan matrix, is that every single patch point from one module to another is under your finger control, and it's under a unique finger control. So it can get, when you cascade 4 or 5 things, it can get complicated very, very quickly. So in this sound, what we can do is we can use different playing techniques, slightly different from that waveguide string sound that we had done. And in this one, you can play it softly, and it will sound like you're kind of rubbing the bowl or the glass, and you're getting this kind of sustained sound. You can also hit it, and you get this kind of plucked, bright timbre. And you can also release, and it's almost like you've accentuated the energy again on the output, and you get this sort of sharp ting sound. So
Yes.
let's play some.
Yeah.
So I'll play it softly first, and you hear the. And then if I release fast.
I think it's absolutely beautiful. I'm gonna say that again in the microphone. I think it's absolutely beautiful, and then
Well, Kuku, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful playing experience because
Yeah.
you own a Continuum, and you know what that kind of, you feel like you're playing something that it's yours, right? And you can really get into the sound.
and some people that I everyone I show the Continuum to, they're impressed, and many of them say, "Wow, it's just like a real instrument." And by real, I don't know what real means, but for them, it becomes an experience that this is actually a musical. It has these qualities that you'd expect from an acoustic instrument, and not that it has to sound entirely acoustic, but it has this richness in the sounds and the way it responds to your touch.
Yeah, that is the main thing. That it is very fast at responding and accurate too. You don't want to invest time in an instrument that fools you in certain ways and it has limitations. What I found in playing this thing is I'm surprising myself all the time at how deep it is really, and it's not as accessible as a normal synthesizer would be in terms of playing it. But there's a reason for that. A violin is not accessible. Playing a flute, you just can't pick it up. And then if you were a good flautist, you couldn't instantly play trumpet or play it in a day. This is a learned thing, for sure. But there's rewards. That's the important thing, is that there are rewards at the end of that learning cycle.
And I had mine for about a year and a half, maybe a year, and I haven't been practicing a lot, but if you're playing a piano or a violin or something, you know that practicing will definitely make you better, but also taking a break and then come back a few weeks later, and then you realize that, okay, now maybe it has sunk in a little bit you can play it a little better. I mean, time also has a function in the learning. It has to kind of sink in.
Yeah.
So I realize now when I'm watching a video of myself playing it a year ago, I'm like, that's sloppy, mate. You could do better. And now when I play it, I feel like I've actually learned to play it much, much better now in just a year. Yeah.
Well, the last thing I heard you did, which was that you were experimenting some soundtracks for your animation film.
Yeah.
That was lovely. Beautiful thing, and you just did, and that was basically like an improvisation, saying, okay, I want to start playing around with some textures because the film was still coming together in your mind, and you wanted to see, okay, how am I going to score this? And so even in that improvisation, you could tell that you really were starting to get into this whole feeling of this is a complete instrument. I can create this world within it. Yeah,
that's the reason why I got the Continuum in the first place, because I had this film score in mind that I felt like the Continuum would be perfect for. And now I'm almost done with that soundtrack, and I felt like, it really worked. It was the right choice.
Oh. It'd be depressing.
Yeah, and it was really bad. No. But let's try another sound.
Okay,
some other flavor.
Oh, yeah, here's an interesting one. So I created a whole series of sounds that I called synth leads, and the only criteria for me in creating these, I wanted to create a body of sounds that were monophonic, and then also that had some kind of more limited dynamic range. It's sort of like more what a traditional synthesizer would have, but that was the only starting point. And then I just let my whims take the best of me and see where it led. So this sound here, it's actually a stacked chord. But what's interesting with the Continuum, is that you can play this monophonic sound with two hands. And so normally if you used one hand to create a large portamento between two areas, we can use two hands and control that portamento just by varying the pressure between the two fingers on the surface. And it's almost like you imagine there was a big seesaw that you had between the two areas, and you had it, and the point was a metal ball that's rolling back and forth on the seesaw. So I'll show that technique.
And one thing that I notice when I'm shooting this now on camera is that I'm using a very wide-angle lens, and it's really hard to show people how subtle a touch you need to invoke to get it to sound.
Yeah, it just doesn't look very dynamic.
No, but I've set up a different lens to show it more in a very zoomed in macro to really show how little pressure is required, and also how dynamic it is in this very intricate variations of pressures.
Our fingers have lots of nerve endings. They're very sensitive instruments. It's like our mouth and our fingers. It's just there's just a lot of input that we get. So to actually take this hand and that finger and play a traditional MIDI keyboard, you're just sacrificing so much possible performance information that you can go in. And it doesn't require, the less distance that you play, the faster you can play, because there's less point for recovery.
Yeah, why don't you show us that drum, the resonant drum, whatever it's called? Because that is really a good sound to show how fast it is. Percussionists, they love this because there is no latency. I guess you can measure some latency, but you can't feel it.
Well, this surface is scanned. It's 3 times a millisecond for every single finger point on it.
Yeah.
And again, so it's.
Yeah, it's really lovely. You're constantly working on updating the software and making new new implementations of
Yeah.
different ideas. Where
Where are we going?
where are you going?
Well, the latest thing that we're excited about, and it's interesting developing these things because we have these ideas, we know the basis of traditional synthesis techniques, and so there's really no mysteries out there. But the real mysteries is a lot of them are underexplored. Yeah. So the next thing, actually, Lippold had started off his career in doing a lot of additive synthesis and trying morphing, getting into that world, and we've kind of stayed away from it because what you do when you do additive is you collect a large amount of data about your input. But the problem is, how do you manipulate that data? And it's always been a thing that causes additive synthesis to sound kind of sterile. But we're going to do a slightly different spin on it this time and create banks of sine waves, which are part of this additive process, but make them bandwidth variable, and also use them in conjunction with some of the other synthesis techniques that we have with our modal filters and our wave shaping and feedback systems.
Cool.
And so use those. The one nice thing that's about additive is that the harmonics can be very responsive very quickly. If you do a physical system and you have you're using these biquad filters, they feedback a lot, and sometimes it's hard to get that energy to go out of them. Yeah. So we're going to see and what kind of things, and hopefully we surprise ourselves and come up with something. So there's always something fun. This is a great ride to be on for sure.
Cool. Well, looking forward to all the future updates. I'm gonna shift lens into a longer lens, and then I'm gonna film your hands while you're playing, and maybe your beard as well, and make some artistic panning between your beard and
the beard, yeah. And you're gonna work in your beard.
Yeah, maybe.
The cuckoo mirror here with your beard.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, so, and by the way, for anyone that hasn't seen this before, all the sounds are coming from the instrument itself. The computer is just there to have access to the editor if we want to change the sounds and create sounds from scratch. But all the sounds that you're hearing now can be played without the computers. So just to be clear about that.
Yeah, that's good. Good point. That's actually a misconception, because oftentimes people think you have a laptop, you're running a soft synth on it. But yes, that's just the GUI.
It can, of course, control other synthesizers as well.
True. It does, yeah.
And right now, with the newer software, it supports this new, what's it called, MPE?
MPE, yeah. Well, it's a system that we had in place for a long time. One of the first development systems that I worked on and prototyped some of the early sounds before we built the synthesizer was Kima, and that was communicating with a thing that it's now a variant in MPE. So, yeah. But it's great to have some sort of standard that the soft synth manufacturers can be more inclined to support multi-timbral instruments like the Continuum, and make it easier to get an even wider palette of sounds available without problems in programming. That's musicians want to play. They don't want to really program or have headaches and problems. So we want to minimize those.
Cool, very nice. Okay, is there some last word you want to say hi to your wife?
Hello, honey. I really miss you.
Oh, that's great. Well, okay. Yeah, I'm just going to film while you... Maybe I could play something too, and maybe you could play.
Do you want to say hello to my wife?
Hello, Ed's wife.